Adriano Liete Ribeiro, or simply Adriano as he's commonly known by, was born and raised in Villa Cruzeiro. It's one of the poorest favelas in Rio de Janeiro. Rio is divided into two halves. Most people are familiar with the first half: white sandy beaches, blue waves, the towering resorts overlooking them, and the green mountains in the background. But behind the fancy resorts, the sand and the waves are the favelas, the shanty towns masked by the resort city. Around 19% of Rio's population lives in these areas, up 12% from 1950. Through those 7 decades, the rich got richer and the poor got poorer, forcing millions of urban Brazilians to move up into the mountains and into the favelas. To many, the favelas symbolize income inequality in Rio. In other words, they're not something Rio is keen on showing off. During the 2016 Summer Olympic Games, local officials had walls built around some of the favelas so athletes, visiting spectators, and more importantly, TV cameras couldn't see the other side of Rio, the side made of rusty sheet metal and dirt. Favelas are places people aspire to escape from. They're riddled with crime and run by gangs and cartels who often wage war on each other, turning the streets into dangerous war zones. Why did Adriano return home after becoming a wealthy soccer star? Adriano started playing soccer when he was 11 years old. He spent most of his time playing at youth leagues, and his primary team was the Flamengos. The Flamengo coaches initially used Adriano's large stature to start in defensive positions, specifically a left side defender. But after a few practices, the coaches saw Adriano's true talent: scoring goals. Typically, central strikers are smaller players known for their quickness and ball-handling ability. On the other hand, Ribeiro was a big kid with the sturdy build of a defender. Nevertheless, no one could argue with his results. Adriano dominated his youth league. Eventually, he worked his way up to a senior club and played professionally. Though Adriano didn't start his first pro game, his coaches liked how he played. They started Adriano in the next match, where he scored his first goal against a team from São Paulo. Adriano kept scoring more and more goals until he earned a prophetic title: the next Ronaldo. No, not Cristiano Ronaldo, but Ronaldo Luiz Nazario de Lima, another Brazilian soccer star. Like Adriano, he was born and raised in Rio. He utilized a creative style to score goals, eventually landing him a spot on the Brazilian national team. Adriano followed in his predecessor's footsteps and joined the national team in 2000, just a year after his debut in the senior league in 1999. Adriano was just 18 when he debuted for his country's soccer team. Around that time, the teenage phenom also signed his first contract with the Flamengos. Adriano agreed to play for 2 years in exchange for over $10 million. The boy from the favelas was about to become a millionaire. As the leader of a professional soccer club, every young boy's dream. 2 men helped Adriano handle his new pile of responsibility: the soccer star he was supposed to replace, Ronaldo, and Adriano's father. Ronaldo had a similar playing style. He was more than willing to help the young upstart whenever they played for Brazil together. He taught Adriano about the game, how to be a professional, and what it takes to be a superstar. Adriano enjoyed the nightlife, but Ronaldo helped him focus on the game instead of booze and beautiful women. However, Adriano's father helped his son differently. If Ronaldo was the mentor, then Adriano's father was the emotional glue that held his ambition together. Adriano loved soccer, and he loved money. But the one thing he cared about most was making his dad proud. Adriano would often forego drunk nights at the club for long, hard soccer practices in the morning. He wanted to be in tip-top shape and continue leading his teams in scoring. Thanks to his dad's influence and Ronaldo's guidance, Adriano became one of the best players in the world. After Adriano played 2 years with the Flamengos, he joined Italy's Inter Milan soccer club. They bought Adriano's $10 million contract in exchange for another player, but they got what they wanted: a superstar. During his years in Italy, people called him the Emperor, the nickname given to young Adriano when he started scoring in nearly every match he played. The famous Roman Emperor Hadrian inspired the name. Unfortunately for Inter Milan, their newly acquired star would leave for a brief time, playing on loan for another Italian team and sharing his time between the two before going back to Milan in 2004. After being passed around like a bag of chips for the next few years, Adriano wanted stability. On the other side of the table, Inter Milan watched their former striker score 21 goals in 37 games with the Parma Soccer Club. They wanted him back. And like a jealous ex, Inter gave Adriano a 4.5-year, $26 million deal to come back to Milan. The 4-year period began in 2004 which was arguably the best year of Adriano's life and career, but also the worst. Adriano scored dozens of goals throughout 2004. FIFA ranked him as the 6th best player on the planet. He played particularly well for Brazil, and he led them to victory in the Copa America, winning them the cup. Adriano also took home the Golden Boot Award for being the best scorer with 7 goals. But Adriano wasn't alone. He was the spearhead of the Magic Quartet that dominated international soccer during the early 2000s. Next to Adriano was his mentor Ronaldo, Ricardo Kaká, and Ronaldinho Gaucho. They led Brazil to several victories, but failed to secure the World Cup title in 2006. The quartet all presumed Adriano would surpass them one day. After all, he was only in his 4th year and already scoring more goals than them at major cups. With a new contract, a golden boot, and a decisive victory at Copa, it certainly looked like Adriano would become one of the greatest scorers of all time, maybe even lead his country to a World Cup one day. Sadly, heartbreaking news destroyed that future on August 4, 2004. While Adriano prepared for a match against the Swiss team in a UEFA qualifier, his father passed away from a sudden illness. After the tragedy, someone from Brazil called Adriano to give him the news. In July, just a couple of months before getting the phone call, Adriano had scored a game-winning goal to win the Copa America final. After the match, Adriano gave a heartfelt speech to the media. He spoke into the mics and said the Copa belonged to his father, and that without his father, he was nothing. Adriano's teammates remember how much he loved his father, and they remember how he reacted when he heard 4 very upsetting words. Adi, Dad is dead. One of his teammates recalls being with Adriano in his hotel room the second after hearing those words. He says Adriano said nothing, then a moment later threw the phone and started screaming at the top of his lungs. The sound gave the teammate goosebumps. Another teammate came by and together they watched over Adriano as if he was their little brother. On the field, Adriano seemed to be playing well. He continued appearing on sports news highlight reels, which showed Adriano scoring goals like usual, except his celebrations were different now. Instead of running around and throwing his arms up in the air, Adriano jogged along, looked up, and pointed 2 fingers towards the sky, or the heavens in this case. The celebration signaled that Adriano was honoring his father by playing great soccer. But Adriano's teammates knew the truth about soccer's emperor. Adriano was not okay. Adriano spent most of his time between 2 cities from 2004 to 2009, Milan, Italy, and Rio, Brazil. Both metros have a thriving nightclub scene, especially Rio. When Adriano wasn't practicing or playing, he could be found at a bar, nightclub, or a party drinking copious amounts of alcohol. His favorite beverage was beer. But thanks to the alcohol, Adriano stayed lively and avoided depression. Almost every medication has a side effect. In Adriano's case, the side effects were a 1-2 punch of brutal hangovers and falling out of shape. Adriano later admitted that he would party until 3 or 4 in the morning and stay up until it was time for practice, still drunk. Most other mornings, he was just hungover. Excessive drinking led to the loss of fitness. Adriano slugged along in practices and workouts. There were times when his coaches forced him to leave and get some rest, leading to Adriano gaining weight and losing strength, cardio, and power in the process. Financially, Adriano burnt through money, spending almost $20,000 per night on women he'd meet at the clubs. In 2009, after 5 successful years, Inter Milan parted ways with Adriano. 7 years later, Adriano retired from professional soccer. His days playing for Brazil's national team were even shorter. You have to be the best of the best to play soccer for Brazil, and Adriano couldn't keep up. Adriano returned to his first club team, the Flamingos, in 2009. He left for 2 years, each with a different club, and eventually signed with Flamengo again in 2012. From 2012 to 2016, Adriano played 3 years and missed 2. And after 2016, Adriano never saw another contract offer. Adriano's deteriorating physical fitness had a lot to do with the soccer world denouncing the former Golden Boot winner, but it wasn't the only reason. Local officials accused Adriano of trafficking in 2014. There was also speculation that he participated in gang-related crimes. Adriano has been associated with the notorious favela gang known as Red Command. He was seen posing with Red members while holding weapons and flashing the Command gang sign. Not a good look. Red Command is responsible for plenty of unsavory things in the Rio favelas. Having even a loose association with the gang is cause enough for suspicion. However, Adriano has never been convicted of a gang-related crime. The trafficking charges never held up due to lack of evidence, and Adriano was free to go. Adriano constantly finds himself in the news, despite retiring years ago. Some sports fans and writers speculate about the ex-emperor trying to reconquer the professional soccer fields. However, it would take months on weight loss and training for Adriano to even get a tryout, and he hasn't shown any interest in playing professionally. Others speculate on Adriano's affiliation with Red Command and whether or not he's involved in criminal activity. While everyone around Brazil and the international soccer world talk about Adriano, the man everyone thought would be the next Ronaldo rides scooters down steep, windy favela roads, hangs out with old friends, and hands out McDonald's cheeseburgers to kids on the street.
Billionaire gambler Heiress was sick of letting the casino win. He couldn't get his money back on the slot, so he decided to try and get it back in court. So, does the house still win in the courtroom? During his heyday, Heiress was a very successful real estate agent. He made millions selling houses on the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. The Gold Coast is as flashy as its name implies. It's home to the Australian film industry and has some of the best beaches on the continent. There are plenty of high-profile clients there to sell expensive homes to, and the average property value is $800,000. Heiress was a real estate agent for 28 years and broke all kinds of different sales records for the area. Heiress's other love, apart from real estate, was gambling. Although it wasn't nearly as profitable as real estate, over 14 months, Heiress wagered almost $1.5 billion on the baccarat tables in Crown Casino in Melbourne. He bet $300,000 per hand and ended up losing more than $30 million. He lost everything he had. He even lost the things he didn't have and ended up owing millions to his lawyers, banks, and friends. These friends thought they were giving him money to fund a real estate venture. In reality, they were just funding his trips to the casino. Crown Casino isn't exactly the most reputable place to go and gamble. They're currently involved in a big legal battle because they've been accused of money laundering and lying to government regulators. Casinos don't carry a reputation for being the most honest businesses around, but Crown was so bad that Australia thought they had to step in. The government described Crown Casino as illegal, dishonest, unethical, and exploitative. They're still open, but under supervision. Heiress knew that he had a serious problem early on in his gambling career. Back in 1994, he got himself banned from the Crown Casino. In Australia, you can get the government to legally ban you from a casino. This means that they cannot let you keep gambling at their casino or they could get into trouble. It seems as though Heiress was making a genuine effort to tackle his gambling addiction. Not only was it illegal for the casino to let him in, it was even illegal for them to send him any sort of promotional material. And if he did somehow gamble there, it was illegal for them to let him keep any of his winnings. Heiress got himself banned from gambling in the Crown and pretty much all other casinos in Australia. However, he caved and still wanted to gamble. He could have tried putting a fake mustache and sneaking into the Crown, but he was a millionaire, so there's no need to do that. He just got on a plane and flew out to Vegas, where he was free to do all the gambling he wanted. Heiress continued to frequent Vegas even after his ban in Australia was lifted per his own request. Maybe he just liked Vegas. But while he was there, he was spotted by someone connected to the Crown. Even though his gambling ban was gone, the Crown had banned Heiress themselves because they were worried he might cause trouble. The Crown didn't want Heiress losing money in Vegas casinos. No, they wanted him to lose money in their casino. The Crown lured Heiress back to Australia with special benefits so that they could keep milking him. It took a lot to get Heiress to leave Vegas, even though he was losing millions there. The Crown gave him all sorts of free stuff. Free luxury rooms, free food, free drinks, free limo rides, and even free private jet trips. The Crown sent a plane to pick him up and fly him out to the casino. It was worth it for them to lose money in the short term on all these freebies for their favorite customer. They knew Heiress would give it back and more. They even flew him out to the Philippines and back for a vacation. He didn't even gamble there. On a few occasions, they did something no casino ever does. They just gave him free money. Sometimes when Heiress got on a plane, a cardboard box with $50,000 inside sat in his seat. That's how confident the Crown was that they'd get all his money back and more. In total, the Crown gave him $10 million worth of cash and accommodations. Everything went according to plan. Heiress lost, and he lost hard. One night, he lost $2.3 million in just 28 minutes. That's a rough half hour. He continued to lose until he was flat broke. Heiress wasn't going down without a fight. His love-hate relationship with the Crown officially tipped all the way to the hate side, and he sued them. He sued them on the basis that they knew he was a gambling addict, yet they set out to exploit his weakness deliberately. The casino, he claimed in court, acted out of malice. They may not have broken any specific laws, but his lawyers argued that the Crown had acted in such bad faith that the court would just have to side with Kakavas. They thought they could make legal history. However, the judge didn't see things the same way. Justice David Harper ruled that there was no law that allowed gamblers to recoup their losses in court. Until some new law is passed, casinos are free to do as they please, and if you're a gambling addict, that's your problem. While it may seem as though the Crown deserves to lose here, it's important to keep in mind the broader legal issue at hand. What would happen if Kakavas had won? Could anyone get their money back from a casino just by claiming to be a gambling addict? How could you prove that you were a gambling addict? The strange court case was not entirely without precedent. In 1999, a poker addict named Chris Reynolds tried to sue a casino. Reynolds had repeatedly asked the casino to deny his credit. They did, but they also let him cash checks and lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. Reynolds begged the club to ban him and not let him gamble there anymore. The casino won in this case as well, even though the manager had made a verbal agreement with Reynolds to not allow him to gamble there anymore. The casino was found to have no liability. What they had done was perhaps cruel, but not illegal. The judge ruled that Reynolds had lost his money as a result of deliberate and voluntary acts. There was just no way for gamblers to get their money back. Unless they continued to gamble and won, that is. But that mindset is kind of the whole problem. A similar case happened in 2007 when a gambler by the name of Furrow sued Sydney Star City Casino. They allowed him to break his self-ban on 65 separate occasions, and he lost $600,000 at the casino. The judge once again ruled that he had only himself to blame and that the casino was not liable for his lost money. There's a reason this whole story happened in Australia. Australians are among the biggest gamblers in the world. During 2017 and 2018, Australians lost a total of $25 billion gambling. That's $1,292 on gambling per person. In case you're wondering, the other biggest gambling countries are Singapore, Ireland, Canada, and Finland. 80% of Australia's population gambles. Gambling is such a big problem in Australia that the government put together a task force to see if anything could be done about it, called the Productivity Commission, and they proposed a few ways the government could step in. A study on casino losses showed that the most dangerous thing in a casino, at least in Australia, are the slot machines, which are what the Australians call pokies. 70% of so-called problem gamblers lose their money on slot machines. So, one of the commission's recommendations was to allow gamblers to set a limit on their spending for a given session. Once they hit the limit, it would bar them from the machines. There is currently a limit on how much you can lose at any given machine per hour. Right now, it's $1,200, but the commission proposed that this should be lowered to $120. As you can imagine, the casinos did not think that this was a good idea. It would be a huge blow to their profits, so much so that they said they would have to downsize the whole operation to accommodate the change. Other countries have created similar sorts of laws in order to curb gambling, so this isn't a purely hypothetical discussion. In Canada, one of the other big gambling countries, casinos use a software called iCare. It may seem preposterous to imagine casinos caring, especially after everything in this video. Canada's iCare system identifies gambling addicts. They claim that it can do so very effectively and is 97% accurate. It's nice that they're identifying them, but they don't really do anything about it. Generally speaking, gambling addicts are not banned. They are, however, offered counseling. That's how the system works in theory anyway. In practice, it's difficult to enforce. Some people in Australia would like to see something similar implemented in their own casinos, only the system would then ban the people it identifies as addicts. It's unlikely that Australia will ever enact such harsh reforms on casinos. Casinos are simply too big of a revenue source for the government. About 10% of the state revenue comes from gambling. So, restrictions on how much you can bet wouldn't just hurt the casinos, it would hurt the government they pay taxes to. After losing the case, Kakavas went back to the more profitable world of real estate. He renewed his real estate license and got back to the thing that actually made him money. His battle with the Crown caused him to take 7 years off from real estate so he could focus on his legal battle that went nowhere. His lawyers were, supposedly, so sure that they would win, they worked for free, planning to cash in on the massive payout from the Crown. Kakavas branched out from just selling beachfront property to selling all sorts of houses. Maybe he realized it was time to switch up his life a bit. He seems to have gotten over the lawsuit and his gambling issues. He's happy to be free from the distractions and has since accepted the court's decision. It took him a long time for Kakavas to escape gambling, but better late than never.
These are a few of the craziest wives and girlfriends out there. Number 7. Blackmail. Sharon Downing wasn't over her ex-husband Steve, so she decided to blackmail him. Steve and Sharon used to be married. Then in 2006, they called it quits. Steve moved on, meeting a new woman and settling down with her. Sharon, however, wasn't ready to put her ex in the past. Steve found himself in Lima, Ohio when Sharon texted him. While the details on their conversation aren't public, we imagine that Sharon poured her heart into those text messages. She missed Steve in a way that only a wife can miss her husband, a specific physical way. Steve agreed to meet her. They engaged in some taboo activities. And then Steve left. 40 minutes later, Steve got a phone call from Sharon. Now, she was blackmailing him. She demanded $10,000, or else she'd tell the new Mrs. Steve all about her husband's extramarital affair. Between a rock and a hard place, Steve called the sheriff's office and reported the incident. Over the next few hours, Steve went from being an unfaithful husband to an undercover police informant. As police watched from a distance, Steve renegotiated a better deal with Sharon and agreed to meet her at a local bank. As soon as the money changed hands, police swarmed in and took Sharon into custody. While Steve doesn't deserve much sympathy, blackmailing and extorting your ex still isn't cool. Sharon pled guilty to attempted extortion and patiently awaited her day in court. With no prior record, the judge may have been lenient on her. Still, her story faded into obscurity, so we wonder if she ever truly got over Steve. Number 6. $1 million. 26-year-old Lynn Helena Halfin was charged with 2 counts of money laundering, fraud, and exploitation of an elderly person after stealing money from her elderly husband, 77-year-old Richard Rappaport. That's almost 3 times her age. She raised some eyebrows when she tried to cash a $1 million check from her husband's account at a local check cashing store in Tampa. Employees refused to cash the check, so Halfin tried 3 more times that same day with different checks. Eventually, she succeeded in cashing $666,000 worth of checks. However, the employees called the police, and investigators questioned her husband. He told them that he trusted Halfin and didn't want her deported back to Israel. She was held at the Hillsborough County Jail in Florida on $1 million bail and pleaded not guilty to all 4 charges. Number 5. Bases loaded. Anna Benson had a rough start in life. In her sophomore year, she dropped out of high school and ran away from home when she was just 16. She started working at adult clubs in Atlanta and had a baby at age 17. She married her baby's father, but they got divorced shortly after. At just 20 years old, Benson was charged with the passing of 18-year-old Michael Evans when he was found deceased in her apartment. When police investigated, they found satanic graffiti all over her apartment, and Benson and her new boyfriend were nowhere to be found. Benson told police that her boyfriend convinced her to do it when they got involved, and they dropped the charges. 2 years later, she met aspiring Major League Baseball player Chris Benson while she was working at the club. They got married in 1999. Chris joined the major leagues as a pitcher, and Benson's lifestyle completely changed. Suddenly, she went from dancing at adult clubs to being married to a millionaire athlete. In 2004, the Pirates traded Chris to the Mets, and Benson appeared on the cover of FHM magazine. She was called baseball's hottest wife. In an interview with Howard Stern, she said that if Chris ever cheated on her, she would get revenge by sleeping with the entire Mets organization. Her outrageous behavior continued in the public eye when she was kicked out of the 2005 World Series of Poker for excessive cursing. The New York Times said that Benson's behavior overshadowed Chris's athletic ability in the MLB and was enough to distract the Mets from a good season. The Mets traded Chris to Baltimore, rumor has it, because of his wife. They almost got divorced in 2006, but decided to give it another try and had a second child together. In July 2012, Chris had enough. He served Anna with divorce papers. She was arrested for threatening Chris and charged with assault and criminal trespassing 1 year later. She pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 15 years of probation. But it didn't stop there. She got in trouble again in 2016 for trespassing and stealing mail from a home in the Atlanta suburbs. When Benson didn't appear for her probation hearing, the judge agreed to let her apply for mental health court instead. Number 4. Hidden camera. When Rob Riggle filed for divorce from his wife, He thought he would finally regain his independence and privacy. But this was far from the truth. In reality, his estranged wife, Tiffany, kept a close eye on him via a hidden camera planted in his home. In the beginning, Rob and Tiffany tried to save their marriage by staying in separate homes. However, they took turns staying in the family home with their kids, but it didn't seem to be working. He filed for divorce after 21 years of marriage. But Rob had this nagging feeling that he was being watched, since Tiffany always seemed to know where he was. He later discovered $28,000 cash missing from a safe in his home, and that someone hacked into his Apple ID and downloaded his private texts, contacts, photos, and emails. When he confronted Tiffany about it, she denied everything. For someone who lived in a separate home, Tiffany seemed to know an awful lot about Rob's private conversations with his assistant and new girlfriend. Then, she or anonymous sources would send him messages that referenced these personal exchanges. So Rob and his girlfriend made a plan to deliberately talk about false information to see if any of it would be leaked. Sure enough, it was. Rob searched his home for all electronic devices and discovered a hidden camera in a smoke detector in his home office. When he opened the device, he found a memory card with more than 10,000 videos dating back 7 months. There was even an incriminating image on the spy camera of Tiffany installing it. Another photo shows her sitting on the floor of his office and counting the stolen cash from his lockbox. He was granted a temporary restraining order against his ex-wife. He also sued her for damages and requested all videos obtained from the hidden camera be analyzed by a forensic expert and turned over to him. Number 3. The Hitman. Brenda Delgado was a dental assistant and aspiring medical student when she met the love of her life. He was a dermatologist named Dr. Ricky, and the two met on a dating app in 2012. Things moved quickly. After only 3 months of dating, they moved in together, and he gave her a promise ring that she proudly showed to her parents. Things were going well until Ricky broke up with her. They got back together for a little while, but broke up soon after. After ending things with Brenda for good in 2015, Ricky met Kendra Hatcher. Again, things went fast. The new couple seemed to be hopelessly in love, and like a lot of exes, Brenda stalked her ex-boyfriend's new love on Facebook. On the outside, Kendra seemed perfect. She was a stunning pediatric dentist who volunteered with her church's mission and provided free dental care to children in Ecuador. She spent breaks volunteering with Habitat for Humanity. Kendra's perfect life abruptly ended when someone took her out in a parking garage. Immediately, police turned their attention to the jealous ex, Brenda. But even Ricky couldn't believe that Brenda was capable of such a heinous act. Police believed them and eventually backed off. When they looked at security footage of the getaway car, they saw a Jeep SUV connected to a single mother named Crystal Cortez. She also denied the detectives' accusations. When the police dug a bit deeper, they found text exchanges between Crystal and a man named Christopher Love. Christopher had a criminal history dating back to high school, with charges including aggravated robbery and assault, but he'd never been accused of severe crimes. When police searched his car, they found a Smith & Wesson pistol, the weapon used in the crime. Christopher and Crystal were arrested and brought in for questioning, but no clear motive was established. Brenda and Crystal were close friends, so police knew Brenda had to be involved somehow. Eventually, Crystal's mother pressured her into confessing. Brenda and Crystal were actually close friends, and she eventually asked Crystal if she would be willing to help hurt her ex's new girlfriend. When Ricky found out, he was shocked. Brenda had been stalking him, tracking his phone and hacking into his iCloud to read all of his messages and emails. She even had a secret key to his apartment. Ricky moved back to his home in California, while Brenda will likely live out the rest of her days in prison. Number 2. Drunk and embarrassed. In April 2018, Amanda Soto, the wife of Florida Democratic Representative Darren Soto, was arrested at Walt Disney World in Florida and charged with disorderly intoxication. Soto grabbed her mother's bag to keep her from walking away near a bus route in Disney Springs. She caught the attention of Deputy Corey Heller since the mother-daughter duo seemed to be intoxicated and acting aggressively with each other. He tried to call them an Uber, but Soto started cursing at him and the Uber driver instead. Heller handcuffed Soto and put her in the back of the police car, where she began screaming and banging her head against the window in an apparent effort to hurt herself. However, those actions only got her further restrained so she couldn't hurt herself. Soto yelled that her husband was a congressman, so she can do whatever she wanted. She was brought to jail that night and was released on bond. Soto was charged with a second-degree misdemeanor. In response, Congressman Soto said that his wife had been treated for depression and recently stopped taking her medication under a doctor's supervision. He said that she drank too much, causing her to reach a volatile state that she deeply regretted. The congressman said that his wife would be reviewing her mental health treatment plan in the future. Number 1. The Finstagrams. Courtney Ireland Ainsworth gives new meaning to the term crazy ex-girlfriend. She was so obsessed with getting revenge on her ex-boyfriend, Louis Jolly, that she created a fake Instagram account on behalf to send herself death threats. The goal? Get him arrested. Courtney and Jolly dated for over 2 years until their relationship ended amicably in October 2019. Courtney jumped into a new relationship and seemingly moved on with her life, but things weren't what they seemed. From July to December 2020, Courtney made over 30 fake profiles and blamed her ex Louis Jolly for the horrible messages in her inbox. She called the police several times and provided screenshots and usernames she attributed to her ex. Some of the messages made particularly violent threats against her. Courtney also said she broke several of her items, damaged her grandmother's home, and threatened her new boyfriend. She also said that he falsely claimed that she was abusing illegal drugs. She submitted 10 police reports alleging that Jolly harassed and stalked her. She submitted photos of damaged items as evidence, including a photo of her chest where Courtney claimed Jolly had come at her with a weapon. As a result, Jolly was arrested 6 times and spent 81 hours in custody, including 1 night in jail. Jolly was charged with assault and stalking, given a restraining order, assigned a federally mandated curfew, and on top of all of that, he lost his job. At times, Jolly wondered if he would be better off dead. Even Courtney's mother got involved, telling police that Jolly breached his electronically tagged home curfew. When the police finally retrieved data from Facebook to back up Courtney's harassment claims, they found that the majority of Jolly's alleged accounts were traceable to Courtney's email and IP addresses. She was arrested in December 2020. When she confessed, police immediately halted all investigations into Jolly's apparent misconduct. Courtney's lawyer said she was just an immature 19-year-old battling from PTSD, complex childhood trauma. She was eventually sent to jail for 10 months and given a 10-year restraining order to stay away from her ex. But the damage was done. Louis was already a shell of the man he once was.
The Hearst family has been wealthy for around 150 years. Their most successful member, William Randolph Hearst, inspired Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, a film made in 1941 depicting a ruthless media mogul named Charles Foster Kane. Like his cinematic counterpart, William Hearst created the largest newspaper publishing company in history. His children inherited his wealth and influence during the 50s when William died at 88 years old. After his passing, his son Randolph had a daughter named Patricia, but everybody called her Patty. Little Patty had no idea how crazy the rest of her life would get. Patty, a nickname she despised growing up, spent her childhood in San Francisco Bay Area in one of the wealthiest communities in America. This was a community of capitalists and their children, often intending to pass their wealth to subsequent generations. Meanwhile, a movement was developing outside of the community gates. History remembers it as the Counterculture Revolution, a sweeping movement that encapsulated young people like Hearst into challenging the beliefs of their parents, which she did. Patty was expected to be a Hearst at home, but outside of her parents' influence, she was liberal, rebelling against the system her family helped create. Put another way, Hearst grew up in 2 different worlds. One was the good old hereditary American capitalism. The other preached that those things were wrong and should be cleansed from society. It was old money versus new age ideas. And the new ideas were winning, at least in Hearst's mind. When she was a teenager during the late 60s and early 70s, Patty Hearst enjoyed smoking pot, voting for liberal politicians, and tripping out on LSD. She often snuck out to escape her safe and secure life for concerts on the rougher sides of town. She outright rejected the music of her neighbor Bing Crosby for the rebellious music of the day, rock and roll, or the early version of it. Hearst rejected the people living in her house and the legacy they strive to protect and preserve every day. Randolph tried sending Patty to a Catholic school, the upscale type with dark paneled walls and strict nuns. Young Patty behaved so badly that the school created so-called Patty rules to keep the hippie in line. However, Hearst refused to go along with punishments, forcing her parents to reluctantly send her to a secular school. The move led Hearst to meet a young math tutor named Stephen Weed. and yes, that's his real name. He would change Hearst's life forever and force Randolph to deal with a potential blow to his family's legacy. Randolph Hearst wanted two things for his daughter: to receive an education, no matter the cost, and for her not to bring down the family's reputation. So, Randolph cut her a deal when she threatened to elope with her 25-year-old math tutor at the age of 18. He agreed to pay for her and Weed's apartment if Patty attended Cal Berkeley. Young Hearst agreed, but only because she wanted to be with Weed. Hearst met him during her junior year of high school while Weed was tutoring her in math. The two apparently fell for each other. Weed was everything her family wasn't: a regular American Joe. He was also very left-wing, like many people his age during the late 60s. Weed's ideas and his handsome young face captivated Hearst, leading to a separation from her family. Hearst got what she wanted. On February 4th, 1974, Hearst was looking forward to her wedding in June and starting a new life as Mrs. Weed until someone knocked on her front door around 9 o'clock at night. Hearst and Weed were watching TV in the living room and weren't expecting any guests this late. So they answered the door to see who it was and found a group they didn't know. The mystery group told them they'd hit a car in the parking lot downstairs and needed to use their phone. The people at the door were Donald DeFries, Nancy Ling Perry, and Willie Wolfe. Perry was the one who knocked on the door. Hearst and Weed didn't see a car downstairs when she stepped away from the front door. Instead, they saw two men, DeFries and Wolfe. Yes, those are their real names too. The two men burst inside with black rags. They took the couple down, gagged their mouths shut, clubbed Weed with a wine bottle, and dragged Hearst out of the house. She pleaded with them to stop. Her neighbor recalls hearing Hearst yell moments before her mouth was stuffed with a ball of fabric. "Please, no, not me." Except Patty is exactly who they wanted. The three kidnappers tossed Hearst into the trunk of their car and drove off. They'd been planning this operation for weeks. When Hearst started attending Berkeley, the trio assigned their friend to get a job at the university, allowing her access to all of the school records, including student addresses. Once they knew where Hearst lived, they devised a simple plan to kidnap her. But why? The trio belonged to an army, the Symbionese Liberation Army, or the SLA to be exact. Not that long ago, two of their fellow Liberation Army members had been jailed for taking the life of a school administrator, and someone of her stature might serve as a valuable bargaining chip to exchange for their release. However, the SLA leaders had other plans. The world watched and waited for 4 days, yet heard nothing from Patty Hearst. All they knew was that the heiress was gone, violently and mysteriously taken from her home by three unknown kidnappers. Then, the SLA dropped off a special recording at a local Berkeley radio station. The recording revealed to authorities, the Hearst family, and the American media who was holding Patty hostage. Soon, the black seven-headed cobra was everywhere, the cobra being the SLA's symbol. Before '74, the group gained minor notoriety for firing cyanide-infused projectiles into a local school superintendent. Since then, the SLA resorted to committing lesser crimes and slowly began fading away as their socio-political revolution lost steam going into the 70s. That is, until the SLA kidnapped Hearst. Before that, the SLA had been an obscure, run-of-the-mill liberal revolutionary organization. With Hearst in custody, the SLA had the eyes of America on them, and the Hearst family resources at their disposal. The Hearst family heard their message loud and clear, primarily because it was delivered by their daughter, who told her parents about her current situation. She was okay, and only suffered from a few scrapes and bruises. Thankfully, the kidnappers were kind enough to wash and bandage them. However, she was surrounded by a whole combat unit armed with automatic weapons who had no intention of letting her go. The General Field Marshal of the Army, known as Sink, also had a message for the Hearsts, though he was more straightforward. He told the Hearsts that whatever happens to their daughter was their responsibility and the responsibility of the authorities they represent. Field Marshal Sink held many of the same ideals Hearst believed in, but with a more potent amount of conviction. During the first couple months of Patty's capture, Sink tried his hardest to make sure the Hearst family paid for their oppressive past. The SLA started by asking Randolph Hearst to fork out $400 million worth of food to feed every poor person in the Bay Area for a couple days. Randolph couldn't come up with the $400 million, so instead he donated $2 million to a disorganized free-for-all food drive that ended in disaster. On top of that, the SLA refused to free Patty. While While Randolph was trying to make a deal with the SLA, the seven-headed cobra was trying to show, or at least make it appear, that Hearst was no longer a captive. In April 1974, 2 months after getting kidnapped, Hearst released another recording. This one showed a surprising change of tune from Patty. She revealed she'd been given a choice. She could either be released in a safe area or join SLA and fight for her freedom and the freedom of all oppressed people. In the recording, Hearst chose to stay and join the SLA. Hearst renamed herself to solidify her public dedication to the SLA. According to another recording, she was given the name Tanya after a comrade who fought alongside Ernesto Che Guevara in Bolivia. In addition to her new name, Hearst, now Tanya, beat the skeptics to the punch and made it clear she wasn't doing this due to brainwashing or torture, but of her own free will. These affirmations would come back to bite her later on. Patty made her SLA debut on April 15th at a bank in the Sunset District of San Francisco. She, along with another Army member, stormed into the bank with assault weapons at their hips. Patty's hair looked dark and curly in the black and white footage. It's the first time anyone who wasn't an SLA member had seen Patty publicly. In her first public appearance since being kidnapped in February, Tanya, not Patty, pointed her weapon at the people inside and ordered them up against the wall. 2 unsuspecting men walked into the bank during her triumphant return to society. Patty and her associate turned and pointed their guns towards the front door. They fired several wild shots into the 2 men, but thankfully weren't accurate enough to do fatal damage. After grabbing the money, Patty and company fled to the getaway car and sped off to their hideout. After the bank robbery, Patty continued to participate in SLA activities. According to evidence compiled by authorities, the heiress helped the SLA construct bombs at their hideout, abduct people, and steal their cars. The bombs Hearst made were later thrown at police during a siege on one of SLA's hideouts. Police bullets took out several members, and some assume Patty was among the deceased, which, by this point, would not have saddened some people. Once the media reported on the bank robbery and other crimes, investigators and news questioned Patty's innocence. Her story had 2 narratives. First, explained Patty's terroristic behavior due to Stockholm Syndrome. Others, like Attorney General William B. Saxby, believed Patty committed these acts because she wanted to, not due to a syndrome or blackmail. No one knew for sure, not until Patty was arrested in 1975. The authorities issued an arrest warrant for Patty after the deadly shootout. Ironically, one of the many felonies police charged her with was kidnapping. 2 counts to be exact. A year and a half later, an army of San Francisco police detectives and FBI agents found Patty in an SLA apartment with another member named Wendy Yoshimura. They cuffed the 2 SLA members and took them into police custody. While filling out her booking papers, Patty listed her occupation as urban guerrilla. That was for the police. For the world, Patty instructed her attorney to release a public statement. Her statement mentioned how she was smiling and felt free and strong. She wanted to send her greetings and love to all her brothers and sisters out there. We assume Patty was referring to her fellow Army members and anyone else who identified with the liberation movement. However, when the charges were filed, the media heiress changed her tune. A few meetings with her attorney brought Patty back down to reality. That reality being, the DA office planned on going after her like there was no tomorrow. Suppose Patty continued expressing positive sentiments towards her former captors. In that case, she might as well plead guilty to 2 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of grand theft auto, and a couple of charges for bank robbery. So her team of attorneys, which included F. Lee Bailey, who decades later would help on O.J. Simpson's famous Dream Team, devised a strategy, the only strategy available to them. Prove that the SLA forced Tanya into committing all those crimes. It was as if she had removed her Tanya mask and became good old Patty again. At least that's what the defense team wanted the jury to think. However, once the trial began, some problems arose, particularly with Bailey's defense strategy. The judge allowed the prosecutors to present evidence to the jury, such as psychiatrist testimonies and evidence suggesting that Patty willingly participated in the SLA. In many cases, Patty had to sit there and listen to experts give testimonies against her, especially psychiatrists who essentially admitted that, in their professional opinion, Patty did not suffer from Stockholm Syndrome. But the prosecutors went a bit further. They questioned why she had revolutionary books about making weapons and explosives in her apartment. They also asked why she never tried to escape, despite every opportunity. On March 20th, 1976, Patty was found guilty of bank robbery, the only crime they could prove she committed without a shadow of a doubt. On sentencing day, Patty received 7 years in prison. Patty's time behind bars was rough. Most of her time in prison was spent in solitary confinement, though not due to bad behavior, but because the warden feared what other prisoners might do to her. Nevertheless, Patty still nearly died behind bars. Just days before she was set to testify against several SLA leaders in court, Patty's lung collapsed. She was immediately taken to a hospital for emergency surgery. The surgery went well, but caused Patty to miss her trip to court. Testifying against the SLA was her ticket to a shorter sentence. Fortunately for Patty, it pays to be rich. Despite being found guilty in court, the court of public opinion thought Patty was innocent. Even stars like John Wayne called for Patty to be pardoned. Sure enough, then-President Jimmy Carter commuted Patty's sentence to probation instead of prison. A decade later, President Bill Clinton fully pardoned Patty. Patty's post-pardon life has been surprisingly positive. Patty wrote and published a memoir detailing her time with the SLA during her probation. After her pardon, she took up acting and appeared in several movies and TV shows like Frasier. Patty was not afraid to appear in the public eye. She allowed herself to be interviewed on several occasions, often spending most of it defending herself from past accusations by San Francisco prosecutors, accusations she will have to live with for the rest of her life. Here are a few of the most entitled people walking around. Number 8. Varayuth Uvadhaya. Varayuth Uvadhaya, the heir to the Red Bull fortune, also paid his way out of a deadly traffic accident that took the life of a police officer. He didn't need to pay someone to go to jail because he just paid the victim's family, so he wouldn't have to go to court at all. Varayuth gave the siblings of the officer he killed in Bangkok $97,000. The Ferrari he crashed was worth about $1 million. The deal protected him from a civil lawsuit, which isn't that unusual in Thailand. The Thai police call this a funeral fee. If the victim's family is satisfied with the money, they won't take the person to court. You can basically just pay your way out of trouble if you can afford it. Varayuth Uvadhaya, who was 27 at the time, was initially charged with drunk driving, causing death by reckless driving, and escaping arrest. $97,000 isn't much to Uvadhaya family since they are worth $5.4 billion. Red Bull was first created in Thailand before an Austrian businessman decided to make a more westernized version to sell to the rest of the world. Number 7. Ethan Couch. The first time Ethan Couch ever showed up in the news was when he mortally injured 4 people in a drunken car crash in 2013. He only got 10 years of probation and no jail time, even though the prosecution wanted to send him to prison for 20 years. The case attracted a lot of outrage and attention when a psychologist testified that Couch was a victim of affluenza. What is affluenza, you ask? Affluenza is a made-up condition that the psychologist said resulted from being raised by super rich parents who never set any limits for him. So, essentially, the defense argued that Ethan was so rich he couldn't be held responsible for his actions and didn't know right from wrong. The worst part is, it actually worked. In 2020, Ethan popped back into the headlines when he was arrested in Texas for violating his probation. He tested positive for THC on a drug patch. THC, which is the stuff in weed that makes you high, is still illegal in Texas. Furthermore, his probation prohibited any recreational drug or alcohol use. This wasn't the first time Ethan had violated parole. In 2015, he violated the terms of his probation when he tried to run away to Mexico with his mom. That 10-year probation was just too much for him to handle, huh? He and his mom were caught and sent back to the United States. A Texas judge ordered him to serve a little less than 2 years of jail time. Maybe he should have tried to hire a body double. Number 6. Bernie Ecclestone. Bernie Ecclestone is extremely wealthy. About $3.3 billion wealthy. But he wasn't super famous and was only familiar to Formula One racing fans. However, he attracted media attention and criticism when he paid a German court $100 million to dismiss corruption charges. The charges could have resulted in a 10-year prison sentence. $100 million for 10 years is a pretty good deal when you're worth billions, if you ask us. The prosecutors in the case decided to accept Ecclestone's settlement offer for a few reasons. For starters, he was 84 years old at the time. They also weren't sure that they could get a conviction, even though Ecclestone admitted to paying millions to a German banker who had himself been successfully prosecuted and was in jail at the time. Ecclestone likes to pay settlements to stay out of jail, but he does not like to pay taxes. During the trial, it came out that he had been under investigation for tax evasion in the UK for 9 years. He avoided paying £1.2 billion worth of taxes through an elaborate evasion scheme. He ended up settling with a payment of just £10 million. Number 5. Justin Combs. Most people probably haven't heard of Justin Combs, but they have probably heard of his dad, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, whichever you prefer. Justin Combs was a defensive back for UCLA's football team and got a huge scholarship, but he didn't exactly get picked for his skill on the field. It turns out that he really only made it because of his dad. Former UCLA coach Rick Neuheisel said in an interview that it was unlikely that UCLA would have scouted Justin Combs if his dad wasn't Puff Daddy. He ended up playing in just one game. He was clearly on the team because of his connections. UCLA ended up getting a little bit too much access to Puff Daddy. Combs got into an argument that got him kicked out of the gym during team workouts. It was the first time he'd worked out with the team, as he opted for a private trainer courtesy of Daddy Diddy. Diddy found out about the fight and the boot from the gym and wasn't happy. He showed up on campus, assaulted a strength and conditioning coach, and swung a kettlebell at someone who tried to pull him away. The campus cops promptly arrested him. Puff Daddy could have gotten hit with felony charges, but that didn't end up happening. Could it be another example of entitled rich people getting away with too much? This incident is essentially the millionaire version of that dad who gets mad at the coach when his son doesn't get to play in Little League. Number 4. Anna Sorokin. Anna Sorokin felt entitled to the life of a wealthy heiress. Since she was not a wealthy heiress, she just pretended like she was, which got her into a lot of legal trouble. The media nicknamed her the Soho Scammer once they got wind of her story. While she grifted her way through high society, she went by Anna Delvey. She pretended to be a German heiress with a $67 million trust fund. Anna used this fun, fake identity to defraud the most elite people in Manhattan. She got access to the most exclusive parties, nightclubs, and hotels. But eventually, it caught up to her, and people figured out that there was no $67 million trust fund. Anna went to court for defrauding hotels, restaurants, banks, and even a private jet company out of around $275,000 during her 10-month life as a fake heiress. In 2019, Anna was convicted on 8 counts, including grand larceny and theft of services. She was sentenced to between 4 to 12 years in prison, fined $24,000, and was ordered to pay nearly $200,000 in restitution. The court didn't think that she was entitled to anything. Thanks to good behavior, she ended up serving a little under 4 years and got out early. In court, she tried to argue that she had always planned on paying back all the people to whom she owed money. Of course, that's what they all say, and nobody bought her excuse. However, a lot of people liked her story. There's a book about her life called My Friend Anna, and Netflix is currently working on a show detailing her wild exploits. Number 3. Hu Bin. In 2009, a rich 20-year-old named Hu Bin was drag racing through the streets of Hangzhou, China. Sadly, he hit a pedestrian who was crossing the street. His car was going so fast that his victim went flying 20 yards and didn't survive the accident. Reporters photographed Hu Bin and his rich friend smoking and laughing while waiting for the cops to show up. They clearly didn't care about what had happened and didn't think there would be real consequences. And they were right. Some believe there was probably a police cover-up of some kind. The cops originally tried to say that Hu was only going 43 miles per hour, which was not true. Then, Hu got off with just a 3-year prison sentence. A very light sentence, considering that you can get the death penalty for severely hurting someone while drunk driving in China. But then things got even more ridiculous. Not only had Hu received a laughably low sentence, but he wouldn't even be serving that sentence himself. The man who appeared in court and went to jail wasn't Hu, but a body double he hired to do it for him. That's why Hu laughed at the scene of the crime. He knew he was going to get away with it. Hiring body doubles to do prison time for someone is well documented in China. China's elites sit at the top of a highly corrupt system, and it's incredible what they can get away with. That same year, a hospital president, who was also involved in a deadly traffic accident, paid one of his employees' fathers to serve his jail time for him. This is so common in China that they actually have a term for it: ding zui. Roughly translated, ding means substitute and zui means crime. Number 2. Lauren Elizabeth Cutshaw. Lawrence Elizabeth Cutshaw blew a stop sign going 60 miles per hour. She smelled like alcohol and her eyes were bloodshot when a police officer pulled her over in her 2011 Ford Fusion. What was her big plan to get out of the situation? She just told the cop, and we're not making this up, "I'm a very clean, thoroughbred white girl. I'm a white, clean girl." The cop asked her what this had to do with anything, and she followed it up with, "You're a cop. You should know what that means." It doesn't get much more entitled than that. Cutshaw also explained to the officer that she had been in a sorority and had gotten good grades. In her mind, this meant that she should be allowed to drive like a drunken maniac. Granted, she was drunk at the time, but still, a Latin phrase, in vino veratis, applies here very well. It means, in wine, there is truth. Alcohol has a tendency to bring out what people really think. Cutshaw, who was 34 at the time, pled guilty to a misdemeanor DUI. In exchange for her plea, several other charges against her were dropped, including speeding, possession of marijuana, possession of drug paraphernalia, and DUI with a blood alcohol content of 0.16 or higher. She was ordered by the court to pay a small fine of just $187. She also had to complete the state's alcohol safety program. Cutshaw could have been sent to jail for 3 to 9 years for this crime. Number 1. Jussie Smollett. In 2019, actor Jussie Smollett told the cops that he had been the victim of a racially motivated attack outside a Chicago apartment early that morning. The story was huge and made all the major headlines. Celebrities, politicians, and activist groups rallied behind him and offered support. But then, it turned out the whole thing was fake. Chicago police investigated the case, but discovered that Smollett orchestrated the supposed attack. The actor paid 2 people he knew from the set of the show Empire to stage the incident. He was just doing it for the publicity he felt he deserved. Smollett paid them to pretend to punch him, pour bleach all over him, put a noose around his neck, and then shout racist slurs at him. Smollett was originally indicted on 16 counts of felony disorderly conduct, but the state's attorney's office suddenly dropped all the charges just a few weeks later. They said this was because he did community service, lost his $10,000 bond, and posed no danger to the community. He was found guilty on 5 felony counts of disorderly conduct for making a false police report. A disorderly conduct charge for making a false report is a Class 4 felony and can get you up to 3 years in prison, as well as a $25,000 fine. It's unlikely that Smollett will see any jail time. However, the city of Chicago does want their money back, the roughly $130,000 they spent investigating his fake police report.
What's worse to make money? Convincing your followers to lose weight dangerously? Or would it be selling, certain smells in a jar to your fans? Number 3. Calorie deficient. Teddy Mellencamp, the daughter of singer John Cougar Mellencamp, was a star on the reality series Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. After she gave birth to her second child, Teddy gained almost 80 pounds and had a tough time losing weight. Mellencamp started a blog called LA Workout Junkie, and she wrote about fitness classes she was involved in. She also posted before and after pictures on her Instagram. Over time, this turned into her All In by Teddy program. Teddy claimed that the program was set up to hold people accountable for their goals. All In was promoted on other Bravo network shows and the official Bravo website. All In by Teddy was expensive. The first 15 days of the program, which was called Jumpstart, cost $599. For those 2 weeks, All In claimed that the participants detoxified and reset their bodies. Next was the monthly program, which cost $439. After that was the weight and workout stage for $165 a month. Finally, there was the maintenance plan that cost $135 a month. All In claimed that diet plans varied by the client, but it seemed to be the same meal plan for every person who signed up. A participant was allowed no more than 700 calories and had to do an hour of cardio every day. People following All In also had to constantly send photos of their scales and what they were eating to Teddy and her staff. They were removed from the program if somebody didn't send those photos or gained weight, quickly going from All In to All Out. What's crazier still is once somebody was kicked out, they weren't refunded any of the money. In rare cases, if a person experienced an emergency with a verified doctor's note, they could get a refund, but they still had to pay a $75 administration fee. A woman named Stephanie Langlet said that All In affected her body image, mental health, and physical health. She came forward with text messages showing how Teddy had bullied her again and again. Stephanie was inspired after seeing a friend who lost a lot of weight from the All In program. She signed up in 2017 and thought the diet would have been set up based on her health and goals. Instead, she was disappointed that it ended up being a one-size-fits-all program. Stephanie explained how she had to send a photo of her weight on a scale each morning. If her weight was up, even by a few ounces, the staff would belittle her and force her to cut out a meal. She finally quit after forcing herself to vomit because she was afraid of being caught eating a piece of chicken. Initially, Stephanie had deleted the messages and photos because she wanted to forget about the terrible experience, but she later stumbled across them in her iCloud account. Stephanie then sent the screenshots of her text to a celebrity gossip Instagram, and the story blew up. Other people started talking about All In's uncertified diet coaches and how the program had caused eating disorders. Shortly after, Teddy announced that Bravo hadn't renewed her contract for Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, a major platform she used to advertise All In. Stephanie's screenshots show that All In was more bullying than wellness coaching. The first message shows Teddy's assistant explaining the program and how Stephanie wouldn't be able to drink alcohol or break the meal plan. The assistant continued to say that while it would be difficult, she would hold her hand and help her through it. Another screenshot shows a text from Mellencamp at 6:41 a.m., simply saying, "Wait." Stephanie responded with a photo of her scale, and Mellencamp replied by saying Stephanie dropped her responsibilities for a man. Teddy then showed up by asking if Stephanie wanted to remain in the program, and if she did, she would need to Venmo $150. In another message, Teddy replied to a photo of Stephanie's soup dinner, asking what the ingredients were. It appears to have gotten worse with time. One day when Stephanie told Teddy she would be going to a wedding, Teddy simply replied to pack your scale, and there was no excuse because Stephanie was a fighter and not a victim. On the day Stephanie forced herself to throw up, she had only eaten a 15-calorie salad, and she started to get nervous she would be bullied after eating the piece of chicken with some green beans. She texted Teddy to explain how she felt, and Mellencamp replied only to object to Stephanie's use of the word chastised. It's probably not shocking to find out that in addition to the toxic behavior, All In's restrictive diet wasn't safe. Lisa Moskovitz, a registered dietitian, said that anyone over 2 years old needs at least 1,200 calories per day. Lisa said that she thought it would have been better if someone came to All In with a plan they received from a medical professional. In that case, Teddy could have helped them stick to the diet, but she shouldn't be creating diet plans for people. Dr. Jesse Hoffman, who specializes in eating disorders, remarked that a diet lower than 1,000 calories with only broth for dinner, requiring someone to send updates after every meal, is a major red flag. Lisa also stressed that a diet like All In promoted could cause severe problems, including nutrient deficiency, low energy, mood disorders, bone loss, and gallstones. Moskovitz believed there should be licensed medical professionals who screen clients for eating disorders before allowing them to join. Other people talked about their terrible memories with All In too. One woman said after joining All In, she had difficulty getting anything done and went to bed at 7:30 p.m. because she had no energy left. Another woman said she had no idea how little food she would be able to eat and wasn't informed about it before she paid to start the program. She still lost 6 to 7 pounds over 8 or 9 days, but when she told her coach she had diarrhea, she still had to show proof of her workout and pictures of her food. Dana Thorogood, who did the program for a month, said she experienced some serious side effects, including dizzy spells, headaches, extreme weakness, and daily diarrhea for a recommended detox tea. Surprisingly, some All In clients praised the program, which is still ongoing today. The prices have even gotten more expensive, with the monthly fee increasing to $439 and the maintenance program rising to $135. The official website FAQ says that the coaches still don't carry any fitness, medical, or health certifications. They say that lived experience makes all the difference. And if you're looking for a coach with a medical certification, because clearly that's not important, the program isn't for you. Number 2. Jarring treat. Stephanie Matto is a YouTube video creator, social media influencer, and reality TV star. Matto first became popular on YouTube and TikTok for making lip-sync videos. She also has an OnlyFans account as well as Unfiltered, her own adult subscription site. Stephanie moved to Los Angeles in her 20s to pursue a career as an actress. Still, she ended up working as an adult dancer and going by the stage name Kitty. Stephanie then went on to write a book called Mean Boys and Memories, a compilation of my most outrageous, hideous, and embarrassing stories. The The self-published book, free on Kindle Unlimited, is a compilation of short stories from her life, and she also talks about her time working as a dancer. She is currently engaged to her fiancé, Nick Stonestreet, who is another famous social media personality. She was previously in a relationship with Erica Owens, who she met on the reality TV series 90 Day Fiancé before the 90 days. Stephanie has made quite a bit of money over time, and as of 2021, she is worth an estimated $3 to $4 million. She lives in New York City and bought a house she's shown online. Maddo is a big fan of cars and owns a white Porsche. She enjoys traveling, has 2 dogs, and likes to cosplay in her spare time. Maddo has aplastic anemia, which means her bone marrow doesn't make enough red and white blood cells. Stephanie has said that something as simple as a common cold could be deadly. Stephanie was a star on the TLC series 90 Day Fiancé, which is a show about couples who applied for a K-1 visa, which is a type of visa for foreigners marrying U.S. citizens. After receiving the visa, they have 90 days to get married. On the show, Stephanie had problems getting intimate with her then-partner, Erica, which led people to say she was faking her sexual orientation for fame. Maddo revealed on the show that she enjoys watching baking videos while taking care of herself. Before the show ended, Stephanie and Erica broke up. At one point, Stephanie decided to auction off a 1-hour virtual candlelight date with her. The auction turned into a bidding war between 2 fans. The winning bid was for $2,700 and was placed by Stephanie Davidson, another star on 90 Day Fiancé. Maddo said she had never met Davidson, but got a message on Instagram from her explaining that she was the winning bidder for the date. Maddo said Davidson wanted 1 hour of her time to discuss marketing ideas together. After 90 Day Fiancé, Stephanie decided to start a new business, selling her boob sweat. Maddo explained that over the years, she received messages from men and women who wanted to buy bras, underwear, her hair, and used bath water. So she thought boob sweat would be profitable as well. Stephanie, who considered herself a human maple tree and her boob sweat the sap, would sit near her pool with a small container pressed against her chest. Maddo would then bottle her sweat and sell it for $500. She explained that several scientific factors, including the temperature and how much water she drank, affected how long it took to fill a jar with sweat. Eventually, production had to be shut down when a bear wandered into her backyard and sent Stephanie running into the house. Unable to sit outside and sweat, she's now looking into investing in a sauna so she can continue to collect her breast sweat. As if selling boob sweat wasn't strange enough, this story gets weirder. Stephanie explained that she decided to sell her own smells bottled in jars as a publicity stunt, but she quickly realized it was a lucrative business. She posted a video explaining the process with millions of views. Maddo said she constantly received orders for her bottled flatulence, and people even asked for videos of her doing the deed. Unfortunately for those customers, she didn't provide that service. Stephanie wasn't ashamed to discuss the production details either. She says she put several rose petals in each jar, claiming that the flowers helped to absorb the scent and make it last longer. The natural gas manufacturer believed she tapped into a massive market with endless potential. Stephanie wasn't afraid to toot her own horn regarding sales numbers either. She sold each jar for $1,000, and she considered that to be a heavily discounted price. Maddo also thoughtfully included a personalized message to each buyer. In one video, she explained that she made almost $50,000 in 1 week and thanked the 97 people who had already purchased her preserved personal smells. Stephanie talked about her gas-generating diet, which consists of beans, protein muffins, yogurt, hard-boiled eggs, and protein shakes. Maddo says she usually sets aside 2 or 3 days each week for this bizarre side hustle. Apparently, coming up with all that air isn't easy, and it doesn't come without its risks. Stephanie almost ended up in the emergency room after eating way too many fiber bars. Maddo revealed that while most of her customers are fans or just people who like to collect odd things, she's had trouble with stalkers. She said one person managed to find her address, and because of that incident, she keeps bear spray in her home along with an attack dog. She even looked into getting a gun license. Eventually, Maddo announced her retirement from selling bottled flatulence, remarking that it was causing too much stress on her body. Always resourceful, Stephanie quickly thought up another way to make money by selling her flatulence as NFTs. Number 1. Gypsy Sisters. Gypsy Sisters was a reality TV show on TLC that followed the lives of a group of gypsy women. It was a spin-off to another TLC series called My Big Fat American Gypsy Wedding. The show centered around sisters Millie, Nettie, Dovey, and Joan. In 2017, Millie, who was known as the black sheep of the family, was arrested for fraud after scamming Toys R Us and Babies R Us. In 2017, Millie went to a Toys R Us and used fake coupons on her phone. She had the cashier scan 7 coupons in total, and each one was worth $300. Millie then used the phony credit to buy merchandise and gift cards worth over $2,400. Once she left the store, she offloaded the gift cards before the store could cancel them. Police and the store's loss prevention team were able to look at the video surveillance and identify her. In all, she was arrested for using fake coupons to buy $18,000 worth of merchandise at Toys R Us. This wasn't the first time Millie got in trouble for using fake coupons. In 2014, she was arrested with her sister for running a coupon scam at a Target store. Millie was able to avoid serious jail time by making a deal in court. She pled guilty to theft by deception and criminal possession of a forged instrument. Lucky for her, the judge went easy and only gave her 5 years of probation. The terms of her probation said that Millie couldn't own a gun, would have to stay clean from drugs and alcohol, and would have to pay back the $18,000 she stole using the scam coupons. She also had to get her GED as a condition of the deal. Millie had to take regular drug and alcohol tests and meet with her probation officer, and if she violated any part of her deal, she could be looking at 6 years in prison. For Brock Pierce, Mark Collins Rector, and Chad Shackley, nothing was off limits. These guys partied so hard that Pierce estimated that he blew $16 million in just 1 year hopping all over Europe. They flew all over traveling in private jets and went out to all the best clubs. For Brooke Pierce, he was just a teenager who had retired from acting when he was just 17. Even if he was just a teenager, he was already well on his way to making hundreds of millions of dollars from the companies he would form. Brock Jeffrey Pierce was born to a middle-class family in Minnesota on November 14, 1980. His mother was a minister and professional disco dancer, while his father worked in construction. Brock grew up playing hockey, but he was never a stranger to the screen. As a toddler, little Brock Pierce appeared in commercials. But he didn't get his first major role till he was 12 years old. He played young Gordon Bombay in The Mighty Ducks, and was so good that he became a household name for his role. Then he had a few more minor stints in the next 4 years in shows such as Little Big League, Ripper Man, and Problem Child 3, Junior in Love. His next big role was starring as Luke Davenport in First Kid in 1996. Brock retired from acting in 1997 at the ripe old age of 17. He had discovered other interests and realized he had a knack for entrepreneurship. He particularly enjoyed gaming and had a short career as a professional gamer. He mined and traded gold in the video game World of Warcraft. This would lay the foundation for his countless other digital money pursuits later in his life, turning him into a billionaire. At 17, Brock launched a dot-com startup called Digital Entertainment Network with Mark Collins Rector and Chad Shackley. DEN was set up to deliver original episodic video content over the internet for niche audiences. It raised a whopping $88 million in venture capital in its heyday from big companies and investors. Back in the 1990s, DEN was part of the first set of dot-com startups that focused on creating and delivering original video content online. This was before the general public adopted broadband internet access. The startup's first show was Chad's World, a pilot for gay teenagers, which Brock produced. DEN was successful, even though Brock was only a minor partner and held 1% of the company's shares. When Brock was 18 years old, he already earned $250,000 per year. Young and rich, Brock and his friends explored Europe lavishly. They enjoyed themselves and were set to cash in on a $75 million IPO in 1999 when their world came crumbling down. Seemingly out of nowhere, a young man claimed that Collins Rector had went after him since he was 13 years old at the house Collins Rector shared with Shackley and Brock. Shortly afterward, 3 more young men accused Brock and his housemates of going after them. 2 of the alleged victims dropped the charges against them, while the third one settled out of court for $21,600. The whole fiasco was terrible news for DEN. A federal grand jury indicted Collins Rector on criminal charges, and all 3 resigned as executives of the company, with several staff members getting laid off till February 2000. DEN eventually filed for bankruptcy and shut down in 2000, and yet it wasn't the end of their trouble. Brock and his friends continued partying, flying in the best private jets and having the craziest experiences they could think of. In May of 2002, they were at their Marbella Beach villa when cops pulled up and found some incriminating things. They faced several criminal charges that were dropped eventually, but it meant that their circus had come to an end. Amidst all the police troubles Brock and co were experiencing, he had a fresh business idea. In 2001, he developed the idea of a company that dealt with MMORPG currency selling services. MMORPG means massively multiplayer online role-playing game, and it is basically a video game where a large number of people play different roles simultaneously and earn rewards. The company, founded in 2001 with Alan de Bonneville, was called Internet Gaming Entertainment, IGE, and was based in Hong Kong. IGE was very successful. It would become the first company to explore this industry, as many other startups would soon follow suit. Between 2004 and 2005, IGE spent over $25 million buying out smaller competitors. It bought 4 auction platforms and some fan and content sites so that by 2005, IGE accounted for about 50% of the industry in the US, an industry that had had about $500 million in annual volume. In 2006, Steve Bannon, a former Goldman Sachs and Breitbart News employee, came on board. Brock brought him in to seek venture capital, which amounted to $60 million. Out of that amount, Brock's cut was a tidy $20 million. But those were the good days. By 2007, the company was in serious hot water with a class action lawsuit over substantially impairing and diminishing players' collective enjoyment of the game. Also, Steve Bannon's investment hadn't gone down well with some former employees, so the company faced a lawsuit from Alan de Bonneville, who had earlier left the company over managerial issues. IGE had no assets to help it recover from the lawsuits or weather the bad times, so it was forced to close down. In 2014, Brock launched his latest idea, Tether, a stablecoin. A stablecoin is a type of cryptocurrency pegged to a stable currency or commodity, like gold. This is to regulate the price of the coin, making it a preferred option for many people in carrying out their daily business transactions. In this case, Tether is pegged to the US dollar. So for every Tether coin in circulation, there is a corresponding dollar in reserve. Or so Tether made the world believe. It turns out, Tether isn't backed by the US dollar, and investors are left questioning the coin's legitimacy. In 2021, the news came out that only 3% of Tether's supply was backed by actual cash, even after the company had led investors to believe it was 100% backed. But the company made progress in increasing its reserve within the next couple of months. In the first quarter of 2022, Tether's $82 billion reserve was split into 86% cash, which was further divided into 52% in U.S. Treasury bonds, 37% in commercial paper, and 11% in money market and actual cash. The other 14% of its reserve was channeled into investments, including $4 billion in corporate bonds, $43 billion in loans, and $5 billion in investment in cryptocurrencies. Tether's shady business deals have put it at the center of the current crypto winter, a bearish market that some fear will soon spill into other investment markets. The company is involved in several lawsuits, other crypto firms are pointing fingers at them, and investors are losing hope in the company's ability to keep their stable coin stable. Tether currently has a market value of $68 billion. Critics believe that if Tether investors completely lose confidence in the coin, it could set off a withdrawal stampede where every investor is trying to exchange their Tether coin for dollars. That kind of bank run could collapse the entire cryptocurrency industry. By many accounts, including Forbes, Brock is one of the richest men in the crypto space today. In 2018, Forbes named him in the top 20 wealthiest people in crypto list. He had an estimated net worth of up to $1.1 billion. And yet, according to his wife, he is a nomad who lives out of a suitcase for weeks at a time. He married Crystal Rose, CEO of Sensei, a company that builds messaging systems. They got married in a smart contract that can be renewed yearly. Neil Strauss, in an article for Rolling Stone titled Brock Pierce, the hippie king of cryptocurrency, describes Brock as a Burning Man mashup of young Indiana Jones, Theo Greyjoy, and an itinerant street magician. According to John Oliver, he is a sleepy, creepy cowboy from the future. His car, or one of them, is a DeLorean with a license plate that reads Satoshi. Brock lives on and off in Puerto Rico with a hippie lifestyle that doesn't pay much attention to schedules or structure. He balances hosting parties and conducting between 3 and 10 meetings simultaneously, sometimes strolling down the street carrying a Bluetooth speaker blasting a remix of the Charlie Chaplin speech from the great dictator. Nonetheless, Brock has repeatedly said he doesn't want to conquer the world, but that he just wants to change it and help people. And this is precisely why he took on Puerto Rico with his company of billionaires and millionaires to supposedly transform the world, starting from the beloved Crypto Rico, or Puerto Crypto, as the crypto community fondly refers to Puerto Rico. Tether is currently run by Bitfinex, a cryptocurrency exchange owned by iFinex Inc. Bitfinex is every bit as controversial, maybe even more controversial than Brock and all of his past escapades. The company executives have stolen customers' money several times and were involved in a Tether scandal in 2018. Two of its top executives involved in managing Tether are dubious characters who have been involved in multiple criminal investigations. In 2018, Tether came under scrutiny for allegedly manipulating the crypto market by minting new coins to increase Bitcoin's price. It was like a Ponzi scheme or a money laundering syndicate using counterfeit currency to buy real assets. Investigations later revealed no evidence to support the claim, but the damage had already been done to Tether's reputation. Surprisingly, Brock claimed he had no affiliation with Tether since he broke off from the company in 2015. Brock hasn't allowed his past shenanigans to stop him from pursuing anything he wants, including politics. In 2020, he ran as an independent candidate for the presidency of the United States. His running mate was, to no one's surprise, Carla Ballard, an entrepreneur like him. He even got the New York Independence Party to nominate him. He got endorsements and support from Tim Draper, a venture capitalist and Bitcoin advocate, Jesse Ventura, former Minnesota governor, mayor, actor, and professional wrestler, and Akon, the musician, who was also his chief campaign strategist. If there is one thing Brock can do, it is get people to rally for him in whatever role he decides to play. Unfortunately for Brock, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris snagged the White House right under his nose. He only got 0.03% of the votes, but rest assured, he'll run again. This time, though, he'll run through other candidates in his new party, which he was supposed to form in 2022. He later announced that he would run for Vermont Senator Patrick Leahy's seat in the United States Senate in 2022. He ended up not filing to qualify for the ballot when he realized running in Vermont could make him lose his federal income tax-free status as a Puerto Rico resident. And if he loses his position in the Puerto Rico tax haven, that might wrench his plans to change the world. As you must know of Brock Price by now, nothing he has encountered yet has stopped him from getting what he wants. So there just might be a chance for him to find a slot in America's leadership. On December 21, 2021, Sheikh Mohammed, the ruler of Dubai, was ordered to pay his wife, Princess Heiress, more than $700 million after the gavel dropped during their divorce proceedings. But that's not the craziest part. A judge also ordered Sheikh to remove an Instagram post containing a passionate poem he wrote to his wife after leaving him in 2019 and fleeing the Emirates city with their 2 children. The post included a not-so-subtle threat: "I don't care if you live or die." When Sheikh posted the controversial Instagram post, the royal marriage was far beyond repair. Implicit death threats tend to do that. But just a few years prior, the marriage was the envy of many around the world. It was a unification of billions of dollars in ancient titles, like a British royal wedding, but with more money, way more money. Sheikh, whose full name and title is Sheikh bin Rashid Al Maktoum, has an estimated net worth of $14 billion, though at the time of his divorce, he was estimated to be worth around $4 to $6 billion. He inherited his fortune from his father, Sheikh Rashid, who was the leader behind Dubai's transformation from a desolate port city in the 50s to the architectural behemoth it is today. Sheikh Rashid invested his oil money into the city, creating a robust economy that doesn't just rely on its ample reserves of black gold. Sheikh Rashid intended for his children and grandchildren to inherit something that would continue after the oil rigs dried up. Sheikh Mohammed and other members of the dynasty are involved in managing financial institutions, banks, construction companies, and real estate. Since taking over as ruler of Dubai in 2006, Sheikh oversaw his father's vision and brought it further than anyone could have imagined. Today, Dubai looks like something out of a Star Wars film. However, despite its futuristic and progressive-looking architecture, the city, or emirate, is ruled by a monarch, a style of government many modern Westerners don't agree with. Nevertheless, Sheikh Mohammed and his contemporaries still live as they did centuries ago, including royal marriages. The Sheikh and Princess Heya first met at equestrian events. As it so happens, Princess Heya grew up riding horses in equestrian competitions. She was even good enough to attend the 2000 Sydney Olympics, where Heya had the privilege of carrying her country's flag during the opening ceremony. Like an emirate state, Jordan is ruled by a monarchy. However, Jordan's hereditary rulers are kept in check by a constitution. Heya is Jordan's princess. Her father, the former king of Jordan and head of the house of Hashim, connects her to a long line of rulers that trace back to 986 AD, making her a great match for Sheikh Mohammed. In 2004, the royal couple married in a lavish but humble ceremony in Heya's home in Jordan. The ceremony took place in a decorated living room area where Mohammed, then 55, and Heya, who was 30 at the time, sat on a couch with her parents. They casually conversed, said their vows, signed their papers, and forged a new royal dynasty between their countries. The media described them as the perfect couple. Like their British contemporaries, the Sheikh and Princess appeared in public together as two royals. As a team, Princess Heya was often seen and photographed at social events. Citizens of the United Arab Emirates saw their princess wearing beautiful dresses, an array of big fancy hats, and giving a warm, genuine-looking smile to cameras and people alike. They were proud of their princess and the happy family she was helping create. The couple had their first child in 2007, a girl named Sheikha Al-Jalila. 5 years later, they had a boy named Sheikh Zayed. The royal quartet seemed to be a happy family. They smiled together, hugged each other, and looked about as normal as a royal family with billions of dollars could look. But that was out in public. Behind the gold curtains was a problem waiting to reveal itself. Russell Flowers was a bodyguard and security expert who worked for Princess Heya during her time in Dubai. He can be seen in many photos with Princess Heya, walking behind her, his brow furrowed as he observes her during international events. Flowers is a big burly guy and looks like your typical bodyguard. Though he's not all that into horses, he has a lot in common with Heya. They both call England home. Flowers lives in Suffolk, while Heya currently resides in a mansion in Kensington. Princess Heya attended school there and fell in love with the culture. And in 2017, she fell for Flowers as well. According to travel records, Heya took Flowers on almost every international trip she took since 2017. Flowers' official position was close protection officer, meaning wherever Heya went, Flowers followed. At the peak of their affair, Heya would travel to her family's country estate in England with Flowers, among other exotic locations, all the while buying her protection officer a Range Rover, an expensive hunting rifle, designer suits, and a luxury watch. While staying in England, Heya, who's typically required to have 2 guards with her, would dismiss the other guard, but rarely waved her hand at Flowers. Eventually, the other officers caught on to the affair. They decided the information was too valuable to waste, so the security team in charge of Heya blackmailed the princess. The team told Princess Heya that they'd tell the public all about the affair if she didn't pay them. Heya, in a panic, tapped into her 10-year-old daughter's bank account, withdrew $7.5 million, and gave the money to her security team. However, loose lips sink ships, and word of the affair made it back to Sheikh Mohammed. There's a picture taken during the Royal Ascot in Berkshire, England, showing Flowers holding Heya and Mohammed's 7-year-old son. The small gesture didn't seem like much at the time. Still, it probably leaves a sour taste in Sheikh's mouth when he looks back at his marriage to Princess Heya. It's safe to say Mohammed did not take the news that his wife was cheating on him very well. Without her knowledge, Sheikh Mohammed divorced Heya under Sharia law on December 19, 2019, meaning they were no longer married, in Dubai at least. He announced the divorce on the 20th anniversary of Heya's father's death. The timing was no coincidence. Mohammed was feeling many emotions at once, but the main driver of his decisions seemed to be resentment. The ruler of Dubai posted a poem on Instagram that sums up his feelings at that time quite well. In the poem, he called his former wife a betrayer and accused her of breaking his precious trust. Mohammed went on to write that her days of lying were over, regardless of what they were as a couple. In other words, Mohammed didn't care about the past. He wanted to make sure Heya's future was in Dubai so that she could face the consequences of her supposed crimes. As the last words of Mohammed's poem read, "I don't care if you live or you die." Regardless of whether she lived or died, Princess Heya didn't plan on staying in Dubai, so she fled the city with her 2 children, seeking asylum in Germany while heading to England. Heya was scared. She feared for her life, her children's life, and their freedom. Before she left, Heya learned something about her husband and his other children, specifically the Sheikh's daughters, that made her flee as soon as she could. The princess had the right to be afraid. Sheikha Latifa, Muhammad's daughter from a previous marriage, mysteriously disappeared after getting on his bad side. She didn't know for sure at the time, but Heya's suspicions were warranted. In a video shared by activists, Sheikha Latifa spends 39 minutes inside her friend's apartment talking about how cruel and controlling her father could be. After introducing herself, her title, and her father's name and title, Latifa warned the viewer that if they're watching this video, her life is in danger. Latifa explained why, revealing that her father had kidnapped her sister Shamsa years ago after she tried to run away at 18. She also claimed her father would hurt anyone to protect his reputation, even his own family. Latifa asked that if anything were to happen to her, this video would go public. Then she stopped recording. Afterward, Latifa and her friend Tina Wahanan got in a car and fled Dubai for the nearby country of Oman. They kept driving until they got to the coast, then ditched the car for a pair of jet skis and rode out to a yacht resting in the dark blue waters. Commanding the yacht was Hervé Joubert, a former French intelligence officer. He and his crew helped the 2 women onto the yacht. Once on board, Latifa contacted someone in Dubai to notify them she was leaving the city. About a week later, the yacht saw 3 large vessels pop up on their radar. The vessels were speeding towards them. The crew realized the people racing after them were Emirati Special Forces as they got closer. Rada Sterling, an activist helping Latifa escape Dubai, says she received a voice message from Sheikha begging for help as the Special Forces boarded the Nostromo. Then she heard gunshots. Sterling didn't hear from Latifa after that, neither did the world. However, Heya knew her husband well enough to figure out what might have happened to Latifa. It was the same fate Heya knew she had to avoid, being held hostage in Dubai. Princess Heya made it to England with her children, safe and sound. But the battle was far from over. Heya had left behind more than just an ex-husband. She'd also left her things behind, so she and Muhammad took their case to the high courts of Britain. Sheikh Mohammed sought to have his children returned to Dubai, while Heya applied for her children to become wards of the court, and as if to add salt to Muhammad's reputational wound, she applied for a forced marriage protection order. Heya was granted both orders. After many months of fact-finding and deliberation, the high courts of Britain decided to release Sheikh Zayed and Shakia Jalila into Heya's custody. The court found enough evidence to say Muhammad probably abducted his 2 daughters, thus taking away their liberty by holding them captive in Dubai. They also found enough evidence to confirm Muhammad had been stalking Heya via Pegasus spyware, which he supposedly used to hack Heya's phone. These issues were more than enough to eliminate Muhammad as a reliable caretaker. The Pegasus spyware and abduction controversies also didn't help Muhammad keep his money. That flew away in droves after the judge ordered Muhammad to pay his ex-wife over $700 million. It was one of the biggest divorce settlements in history. Some of the $700 million was tied up in assets that Heya had bought in Dubai. Assets like horses, jewelry, haute couture clothing, and ponies for the kids, all of which amounted to tens of millions of dollars. The designer clothing was nearly $100 million, all on its own. However, most of Heya's settlement money went toward maintaining her multi-million-dollar English estate and paying for lifelong security for her and the 2 children. Heya also convinced the court to force Muhammad to pay each child an allowance of $5 million per year and $15 million when they become adults. By comparison, Bill Gates is only leaving his children $10 million in his will. But that's nothing new for the ex-royal couple. Princess Heya and Sheikh Mohammed spent lavishly when they were together. One court record claims the couple once spent $2.6 million during a summer vacation abroad. And though their relationship may be over, they're still the same big spenders, living lavishly, just in different parts of the world. Here are a few of the worst rich human beings. Number 9. Voryuth Yovidjaya. Charges were recently dropped against Voryuth Yovidjaya, heir to the Red Bull fortune, after a hit-and-run accident took a police officer's life in 2012. Yovidjaya, the grandson of Red Bull co-founder and the 3rd richest man in Thailand, Chelio Yovidjaya, crashed his Ferrari into the man and fled the scene. Investigators found Yovidjaya and his damaged car in one of Bangkok's wealthiest areas. He was charged with speeding, fleeing the scene, and reckless driving. A blood test also revealed alcohol and narcotics in his blood at the time of the crime, but he was never arrested. Jovijaya missed 8 court appearances, delaying the case several months. His lawyer stated that the alcohol content was due to stress, and the narcotics were from a recent dental procedure. Initially, Jovijaya blamed the accident on his chauffeur, but after CCTV footage revealed that he was, in fact, behind the wheel, he admitted wrongdoing. He also paid the victim's family $100,000 so they wouldn't press additional charges. The Thai public, already frustrated by their government, was worried that this case would not be taken seriously due to Jovijaya's wealthy background. Police promised to do a proper investigation. 5 years passed and they never charged him after 5 years. Sadly, the statute of limitations expired for many of the crimes. In 2020, the police dropped all charges, stating new evidence and advice from the Attorney General. The Thai public was outraged and believed this was another example of rich people paying their way out of the justice system. Many people boycotted TCP Group, the company that owns Thai Red Bull, which responded by saying that Jovijaya is not affiliated with the company. These dropped charges and public anger came at a time of economic and political tension in Thailand. Number 8. Joe Low. Joe Low is the Malaysian businessman and mastermind behind a financial scandal involving Wall Street, celebrities, offshore companies, and the Middle East. Money was stolen from One Malaysia Development Berhad, or 1MDB, and used to purchase land, boats, and Hollywood films. He also basically just wasted the money partying with celebrities and also buying gifts from models in hopes of dating them, such as a necklace from Miranda Kerr. 1MDB was intended to invest in ecotourism and green energy to create jobs for Malaysians. Low promised to fund his ventures through money from the Middle East and borrow from other countries. He also promised the Prime Minister to help fund his campaigns and pay off supporters. Prime Minister Najib Razak was arrested on charges of money laundering, criminal breach of trust, and abuse of power for his involvement. He pleaded not guilty. Low also maintained his innocence via a statement made on his website. Number 7. Brandon Davis. Heir to Davis Oil, a 20th Century Fox scion and infamous Hollywood socialite, Brandon Greasy Bear Davis has been known for his slew of immature behavior in the art scene. Known for being Paris Hilton's Hollywood nightclub accomplice and Lindsay Lohan's media nemesis, Davis is heir to a fortune with an obnoxious attitude to match. In 2007, Davis was sued by the Atlantis Paradise Island Resort in the Bahamas for bounced checks. In 2013, he got into a rift with another guest at the grand opening of the Museo Jumex in Mexico City. Those in attendance were members of high society and big names in the art world. The museum owned the largest contemporary art collection in Latin America. Grand opening celebrations included a lavish Saturday night party with over 1,000 guests. One partygoer reported seeing Davis hurling ice cubes near the dance floor. When one cube hit a wealthy Mexican man with armed security guards, he and his security detail confronted Davis. The confrontation turned physical until the two were forcefully separated. When asked about the incident later, Davis said it resolved itself. By 2015, his behavior hadn't changed. He received a DUI after drunkenly crashing his luxury car, despite owing $300,000 to the Wynn and Bellagio casinos in Las Vegas. Davis instead partied with models on mega yachts in Cannes. He was ordered to pay $9,000 per month until he settles the debt. Number 6. Akash Ambani. Akash Ambani is a wealthy tech mogul and the son of Mukesh Ambani, the richest man in India. Akash loves to post his escapades on Instagram, boasting about his obnoxious wealth. His do-it-for-the-gram attitude of reckless driving resulted in a car accident that injured 2 people in Mumbai. He was driving his custom Aston Martin at such incredible speed that when he hit the other car, an Audi driver by a college student, the Audi went over the highway divider and collided with an oncoming bus. Akash's car also hit another car with a pregnant passenger inside. Akash sprinted to one of the security vehicles driving behind him and fled the scene. It took 12 hours to gather eyewitness testimony. After 3 weeks, the police still didn't have a suspect. Eventually, in place of Akash, one of the family's trusted drivers, Bansalal Joshi, showed up at the police station to confess to the accident. He said he took the car for a test drive and crashed it, but something didn't seem right. At the time of the crash, there were 2 security details following the Aston Martin. 2 security vehicles would not be necessary for a chauffeur taking a car out on a test drive. Also, a chauffeur would not be allowed to drive an Aston Martin at over 100 kilometers per hour, especially if being followed by security. The Audi driver reported the Aston Martin driver as a young man, not an older male chauffeur. Police did not arrest Joshi because there were too many holes in the story. Akash has ties to mass media in India, and as a result, this car accident was not reported in the news. The accident details are still shady, and no charges have been filed. Just another example of the ultra-wealthy exploiting the justice system. Number 5. The Koch brothers. Koch Industries is the second largest private company in the USA, with $115 billion in annual revenue. Brothers Charles and David Koch are worth more than $40 billion each. They have tremendous influence in politics and are known for funneling their money into the Republican Party in attempts to sway votes in Congress. Koch Industries produces a record number of toxic waste and is among the U.S.'s top 3 companies responsible for pollution. Koch Industries dumps more waste into American water than General Electric and International Paper combined. Under the direction of Charles Koch, the company has violated the Clean Air Act countless times, willing to pay hefty fines as long as they are less costly than eco-friendly procedures. When the OPEC oil embargo negatively affected profits in the 1970s, Koch Industries was caught overcharging Americans for crude oil. As a result, they had to pay over $20 million in rebates and price reductions. Youngest brother Bill Koch fought for control of Koch Industries, hoping to take the company public. Unsuccessful, Bill informed the FBI of Koch Industries' unethical practices, including stealing oil from Native American tribes. The FBI organized a sting and discovered that nearly a quarter of the company's crude oil profits came from this stolen oil. Koch Industries covered oil spills with forged maintenance records to avoid further scrutiny. From 1988 to 1996, the company spilled 11.6 million gallons of crude oil into the American waterways. They also dumped ammonia-laced wastewater into the Mississippi River. In 1996, an old Koch pipeline carrying butane, which is lighter fluid, ruptured in a creek bed and caused the truck to become engulfed in flames. 2 children passed away because of it. Though Koch Industries now boasts about its awards for health and safety, it's all for show. When oil prices tanked during the 2008 economic recession, Koch hoarded oil supplies to increase value. The company was also trading with U.S. enemies, even doing business with a company that supplied IEDs to insurgents in the Middle East. Koch continues to use its incredible fortune to bribe politicians to favor the rich and the fossil fuel industry. The planet gets sicker, and the Kochs get richer. Number 4. Li Gang. In 2010, Li Kuoming was driving drunk on a college campus in China when he fatally struck a 20-year-old female college student and critically injured another with his car. He tried to flee the scene and yelled, "Go ahead and sue me. My father is Li Gang." Li Gang was the local deputy police chief. Li Kuoming's spoiled attitude went viral on the internet and triggered outrage from the Chinese public, who are sick of the rich and powerful thinking they are above the law. Li Kuoming issued an apology, which the victims' families rejected. His father then tried to settle with the victim's family on behalf of his son out of court, but was unsuccessful. Li Kuoming pled guilty to drunk driving and manslaughter, but the family insists this still was not enough. Number 3. Param Sharma. Police arrested Param Sharma after catching him riding in the back seat of a driverless Tesla Model 3 while it drove itself down the highway. He posted a video on Instagram, one of many posts about his gold-collar life amid blue-collar peasants. California Highway Patrol arrested and charged him with 2 counts of reckless driving. Sharma has a history of flaunting his wealth on social media, posting photos of stacks of cash and sports cars costing upward of $500,000. He tries to create comedy through wealth, trolling celebrities and mocking the working class. In one of his infamous social media tirades, he posts multiple videos from the back seat of a driverless Tesla. In one video, he ironically reads about the arrest of 2 passengers caught relaxing in the back seat of their self-driving car. Consistent with the persona Sharma created online, he didn't seem bothered that his Tesla Model 3 could be taken away after the incident. He even suggested that he has enough money just to buy more Teslas. Though Tesla sells a package for self-driving vehicles, a person must sit in the driver's seat. This vehicle controls the car as it changes lanes, stops for traffic lights, stop signs, and enters and exits the highway. But test runs show inconsistent results, and the feature does not account for sudden changes. It is nowhere near flawless. Shortly after he was released from Santa Rita jail, Sharma arrived at an interview in the back seat of a driverless Tesla Model 3. Number 2. Eddie Davenport. Eddie Davenport, known as Lord Davenport or Fast Eddie, was found to be scamming several people by offering fake startup loans to desperate entrepreneurs. Victims were promised credit but needed to pay for background checks and vetting fees before receiving the loan. Davenport and his business partner stole £4.5 million and never gave out the loans they promised. In turn, Davenport lived a life of luxury, lavish trips, exclusive pool parties, expensive champagne, and royal guests. He was eventually convicted of conspiracy to defraud. In court, Davenport seemed unbothered, smirking at his sentencing and smiling at his 25-year-old Thai girlfriend as the court's decision was announced. His 2 associates admitted guilt, but Davenport maintained his innocence. That's only scratching the surface of the self-proclaimed Lord Davenport. Find out in detail how he ran his scams in this full-length video. Number 1. Gina Rinehart. Gina Rinehart is the heir to a mining company in Australia and earns about $600 per second. She faced backlash after posting on the Sydney Mining Club website that Australia needs to compete with the low manufacturing costs in other parts of the world, especially Africa, where some people work for $2 per day. The Prime Minister immediately rejected Rinehart's statement, saying that Australia stands for fair wages and workers' rights. Rinehart was in hot water before that, saying that people should spend more time working hard than resenting the rich. Rinehart is on the Forbes list for richest people and continues insulting working families, despite having her fortune handed to her on a silver platter. Click to watch one of these next videos, and let us know in the comments section what would you rather have. A higher consumption tax for things we buy, but no income tax? Or would you rather have higher income taxes but no consumption taxes on anything we buy?